Okay, we have our master scene here, and remember I said keep all your transition logic scenes in one folder, because when you go to import it into Trio, it's going to need to be accessed from just one folder. You can't have scenes scattered about in different folders and expect the transition logic to work. Our first step here is creating our first call-up scene. So I'm going to come into our database and say create new scene. To keep it simple, let's just say this is call-up scene A, because this is going to be our state A. I'm going to go ahead and open our new scene here. And immediately I'm going to go into my scene settings and grab those snapshots that we took. This is my reference. So here I just drag it into the background image. And I'm going to start a new group here. Use any font that you want. I have a series of fonts right here. So I'm just going to drag this font down and come into the font editor. And first of all, you can type in any text you want. I'm going to say coming up. And instead of lowercase, let's do all capitals. However you want to set the type, I'm just going to change mine to geometry right now. I'm going to move this over. You know, you have your title safe, area safe right here that we can turn on to make sure that we're within the safe area, and scale my font down to whatever size I want. We need to pay attention to the Z position. I'm going to move mine up 2. When we designed our lower third banner in the master scene, we kept ours at 0 plane. So when transition logic brings this graphic on, we don't want them to intersect on the same Z plane. We want the call up scene graphic or the text graphic to be in front of it. So just move it up 1 or 2 and you'll be safe. If you want to be organized, again, you can come up and rename your container. Furthermore, if you are building these graphics for a producer and or Trio to fill out, then there are certain parameters that you'll want to take into account, such as word count and how many characters they're allowed to type and such. So if you want, you can come into your tools folder and use this max size to limit the amount or to shrink the text when it comes in. A good way to tell on this max size is that we already had this text scale down to 0.53 when we dropped the max size onto it. It resizes it. So I'm just going to use that 0.53 as my input parameter here. I'm going to come down here and say 0.53. And now it's just a matter of typing in the text to figure out where you want it to end. So I just type in some random things here and I want it to go all the way to the edge. So I just adjust my max width to the maximum amount of where I want it to go. Now, if we delete all that, so what's going to happen is if the producer comes in and starts typing, it's going to reach that character and start to shrink. Now, if you want it to go just on the scale of Y, we could turn that on. Since this is a call-up scene, since we want to give it control to the producer and or Trio operator, we need to use these control plugins. This is the next step and very important because when I drag this control text, which gives them control, it's also going to add this control object, which we'll get to in a second. First, let's go into the control text. It gives us a field identifier, which I'm going to keep at 1. It gives us the description. You can change that if you want. We have some extra things in here that we can give control and or limit to the producer / Trio operator. We have a maximal characters. So if you only want them to be able to type 25 characters, you type in 25. Since we have a max size on that, we don't need to worry about a maximum number of characters. We're just going to leave it at -1, which means unlimited number. If we want to limit this to uppercase, I'm just going to keep this uppercase button on. And then if you want to expose the kerning, expose line spacing, expose the font, which means they'll be able to change the actual font style of it and or justification, you can add all of that or turn these things on. I'm going to reset my -1. And that's all set. Now we need to come up to our object. And this is where all the naming conventions come together. When we're in this object plugin, what we need to do is go into the control, transition logic, and turn that on. First, if you want to give it a description, I can, let's say this, if you just want to call it a text, since it's state A, that's fine. Layer identifier is the name of the director, which we named L3. The naming conventions are case sensitive, so be very careful. If I typed in a lowercase l, this would not work. State identifier means which stop point and or which state we are within the timeline. And since we're on state A, I'm going to type in state A. Now the background scene We called that master, and then I'm going to hit save. And if you had your scene setting in here, I'm going to turn that inactive and or just trash that and hit save again. And that's it for our first scene. Let's move on to the next one.